There's just one psychological trigger that can make any woman obsessed to the point of madness. And this trigger is so powerful that no matter how hard she tries, she simply can't ignore it. I've not only read about this in books, but I've seen it again and again in people's lives, in relationships, and in many real-life cases. We've all noticed at some point that there are certain men women literally go crazy for. Women who are usually very smart, very stable, suddenly lose control of their minds when it comes to this kind of man. You've probably seen this in your own friend circle or even in your family. There's always that one girl who's stuck on a guy who doesn't even treat her that well. Sometimes he ignores her, sometimes he's distant, but still she keeps thinking about him. Now the big question is, why does this happen? Why does a woman's heart and mind get hooked on one man and refuse to let go? Is this just attraction? Or is there a deeper psychological game happening behind the scenes? Psychologists have studied this for years. In one study, researchers from New York University found a very specific pattern in women's brains. Whenever a man puts a woman in a state of uncertainty, sometimes giving her attention, sometimes pulling away, that woman's brain starts thinking about him more and more. It's the same as when you're waiting for a social media notification. When you don't know when the reply is coming, your brain gets even more obsessed. And this obsession is so real that brain imaging studies have proven it. In MRI scans, it clearly shows that when women receive mixed signals, the dopamine reward center in their brains becomes more active. In simple words, uncertainty is the fuel that keeps the obsession burning. But here's the big twist. This obsession doesn't work with just any guy. It only works when the man already has some basic attraction factors. Things like confidence, self-respect, and a sense of control. If he doesn't have those, then the same uncertainty doesn't create obsession. It just creates irritation. So the real game isn't just about ignoring. It's about finding that balance, where the woman feels, this man is important to me, but I haven't fully gotten him yet. So what exactly is that psychological trigger that makes women obsessed to the point of madness? That trigger is called emotional uncertainty, which means when a woman's mind doesn't get a clear answer to questions like, what does this man really feel for me? How much does he care about me? Where is this relationship going? Her mind keeps circling back to the same man again and again. A famous research study from Harvard University found that when women don't know what a man thinks about them, they actually spend more time thinking about him, invest more of their emotions, and get more deeply attached. In other words, uncertainty creates obsession. You've probably seen this in real life too. If a man constantly calls a woman, sends her messages all the time, gives her compliments non-stop, at first she might like it, but slowly it becomes predictable. And predictability means boredom. But if that same man sometimes gives her attention and sometimes goes quiet, sometimes shows care and then creates distance, the woman's mind automatically starts asking questions. Does he really want me or not? Why is he ignoring me? Is he talking to someone else? And when these questions come, the brain's dopamine system goes into overdrive. Dopamine is the same chemical that makes gambling, addictions, and social media scrolling so addictive. That means uncertainty naturally turns into obsession. Psychologists call this the reward prediction error effect. When you sometimes get a reward and sometimes don't, your brain works even harder to chase that reward. And that exact same pattern pulls women toward the man who has created emotional uncertainty in their minds. But here's something important to remember. This trick only works when the man himself is high value. If a weak, insecure, or needy man ignores a woman, she'll just say, he doesn't even deserve me. But when the same thing is done by a confident, self-respecting man, the woman's mind can't help but wonder, does he ignore everyone like this? Or only me? Why am I not getting his full attention? I need to win him over. That's the exact psychological trigger that creates obsession. So now the question is, if emotional uncertainty is the biggest trigger that makes women obsessed, how should it actually be used? First, you need to understand one important thing. There's a very fine line between obsession and respect. If you only try to get a woman's attention by constantly confusing her, playing games, or pretending to be someone you're not, it's not going to work in the long run. But if you're naturally the kind of man who is busy in his own life, someone with goals, ambitions, and hobbies, then you automatically create that scarcity factor, which means you're not available all the time. And that lack of availability creates emotional uncertainty in a woman's mind. In a psychology experiment, researchers found that when people experience a reward on an on and off pattern, sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't, their brains work even harder to chase that reward. In the same way, when a woman feels this man is mine, but not completely mine, both her mind and her heart start investing more strongly. Now, emotional uncertainty does not mean being rude, being disrespectful, or intentionally hurting someone. It simply means keeping control of your own life. Don't always be available on calls or texts. Sometimes give priority to your own work, your passions, your friends, and your family. This naturally creates a bit of tension between you and the woman, and that tension slowly turns attraction into obsession. You've probably heard people say 1,000 times, women leave the good guys and run after bad boys. But the truth is, it's not because they're bad boys. It's because bad boys are never predictable. Sometimes they care, sometimes they ignore, sometimes they give attention, and sometimes they disappear. And that unpredictability keeps pulling a woman's mind back to the same man again and again. Women become obsessed with the man who is valuable to them, but not completely predictable. So, if you want a woman to think about you day and night to keep trying to win you over, you need to give her some space and add a little mystery to your life. Because the biggest psychological trigger that drives a woman into obsession is emotional uncertainty. Love becomes stronger when, along with attraction, there's a little bit of mystery. And it's that mystery that makes a woman truly obsessed with a man.